Hi, MamaRed here on September 2nd, 2008, talking to you about past lives. Do they exist or don't they? I don't know what your belief is, and I know that mine changed drastically in about 93, 94 when I had the opportunity to meet with a woman who had an amazing set of gifts and had taught me so much as I had gone through her programs, understood what she did, and learned from her. One day she said, "Why don't we try past life regression?" And since curiosity is one of the hallmarks of my personality, I said, "Sure, why not? Sounds like fun to me." And we scheduled it. Now, mind you, I had grown up a good Midwestern girl with good, proper learning and work ethic and all those things, and we didn't believe in that kind of stuff. However, I had always been curious about other cultures, other belief systems, and other ways of being. So this was just one of those things where I got to learn because I was actually involved with a great deal of different people, including the gentleman I was dating who was a Buddhist and had introduced me to that particular culture. So the day came when I was going to be on the massage table learning about this thing called past life regressions. Still pretty much a non believer, but curious. As I stepped into her room and she put me into a hypnotic state in the most gentle way, putting me in this golden bubble of light, saying that I was safe and sound and would be an observer to this life, should we find one. So as time went on and I walked into her space, even though I could hear what was going on in the other room, what was going on around me, I somehow was in a different space too. It was the oddest thing. I was in both spaces at once and I could kind of process both at the same time. At one point, she stopped me and said, "Where are you now?" And I looked around and saw a massive expanse of snow. It was so cold out there, and I was shivering, and I could feel myself shivering on the table, even though she kept saying, "You're an observer, you're an observer, you needn't relive this." I couldn't do it. It was really interesting. And at one point, she said, "Well, why don't you see if you can get in out of the cold?" And I walked up to the door of this little cabin, knocked on it, and shiveringly said, "Oh, could I please come in? I am so cold." And the person looked at me and said, "Absolutely not. There is no way that you can come in here. We won't have the likes of you here." And as I cried, she pulled me back into the safety of the golden bubble, and we continued our journey. At one point, she dropped me down, if you will, in the midst of another life, where she said, "And where are you? And who are you? And what do you look like?" And I said, "I am this tall, red-headed girl, very, very long red hair, green eyes, and my trousers are," and before I could finish, she said, "Well, oh, you're a man." And I said, "No, I'm not a man. I simply don't agree with wearing those stupid clothes that you have to wear according to what society says." And the home I described had this beautiful healing garden in the back with a gazebo in the middle, just perfect for sitting down and having a conversation, which is what I found myself doing with this amazingly gorgeous man, whom I just adored and I knew instantly was the love of my life. However, as we learned more on this journey, we learned that he was the son of the estate owner, and there is no way that he could be involved with the likes of me, because, you see, I was the village healer, or the village witch, depending on how people were treating me, and I had come from a long line of those healers. My mother, my grandmother, and her mother before her, we had all been healers. We had all been shunned, essentially, although it wasn't a formal shunning. People only spoke to us when they had to because we were considered the weirdos. As we went on, I realized that this man that I loved so much was getting married. And he got married to the woman that was the selection that his family made for him, as was the custom of the time. And they went on to have a child. One night, as I was sitting in my little hut, if you will, I heard a knock at the door, and when I opened the door, there was this man I adored, his wife, and this precious little child who I knew instantly was desperately ill. I grabbed the baby, and I did everything I knew how to help that baby survive, all the while suffering from the glances and the accusations the woman was making that I would kill the child because of my jealousy. I did everything I could. I knew I did everything I could, but as I looked in stunned horror, the spirit left the baby's body, and I knew the baby was dead. And yet when I looked up, the baby looked down at me and said, "It's okay. It's all as it should be. It is all perfect." In the meantime, the tears and the ranting and the raving and the yelling and the screaming were going on, that I had done this on purpose out of my horrible jealousy, that I didn't want the baby to live, which was so far from the truth. The next scene, I was in this crowded town hall of some place, some sort, in which we were crammed shoulder to shoulder, and I was at the front of the room facing a judge while the people chanted behind me, "She's a witch, burn her alive, she's a witch, burn her alive." And I was screaming, "No, I'm not, no, I'm not, you know I did everything I could." And the judge looked away, and when I looked to the back of the room, there was the man I adored looking away from me, not defending me, even though he knew that I had done everything I could, and that they had simply come too late. And I screamed at him, "You know I didn't do this. You know that I did everything I could." And yet he wouldn't stand up for me. The next scene, I saw this huge pile of branches and wood and a stake in the middle, and I was tied to that stake. And I could feel the fire burning through my feet, and I was crawling up the table in this lifetime, terrified, burned. And the woman who was guiding me kept saying, "You're not there, you're in the golden bubble, you can look." And she said she brought me up and out because she knew that I could not do that. She knew I couldn't stay remote, and I don't know why. I have no idea. When she pulled me up and out, we talked about what had happened and what it had meant in this lifetime, and I realized that I was still carrying on, if you will, with those same people. The judge was my first husband. The tall man that I loved so much was the man I was dating at the time, who became my second husband. The man who was the Buddhist and was teaching me all sorts of different ways. The woman was a friend who now is no longer in my life, even though we've known each other for about 19 years. And the little baby was the son in this life. And the amazing thing is the amount of guilt I carried about him in this life. I also had this thing where I could not stand fire. I liked to look at it, but heaven forbid I got the slightest burn, I would freak out way out of proportion from what it was in terms of actual burn, like on a toaster oven or something like that. Once this happened and once I went through this process and once I looked at it, I've never had the same thing again. Even a sunburn doesn't bother me. Even a real big burn doesn't bother me, although it always had before. I've gone on since to study more about past lives, to study more about the genetics of what may be possible, and I don't know that this rings true for you. I don't know your belief system. I do know that has changed my belief in past lives, what they mean, and the gifts that they can be about healing in this lifetime. And that is what that became for me, is a way of healing things that I didn't understand in this lifetime and couldn't explain. As time has gone on, I've also ended up helping others process past lives, even unintentionally, and it has been an amazing journey. So I hope you have enjoyed this story and that you will come to your own belief system and not just knock out of hand what you may or may not understand in reality and with logic. This is one of those things of the heart, and I know for me it is truth. I don't know what it will be for you. Thank you for listening. Have an amazing day filled with passionate, powerful possibilities. Love and light. Hugs and blessings. MamaRed.